In the last video, I created this browse tab, and the way that I did it was I grabbed some JSON from Last.fm and I dropped it in my project, and I created a model object, so using this new JSON model. And I went through and I chose the properties that I wanted to use in my model, and then within the browse tab itself, when that tab gets created, so on start, I looped through the model and I created a bunch of list cells for each of the artists. I set a few properties on that list cell, and then I set the container of that item that we just created to the list, so the column that makes up this list. So that's essentially what we did in the last video. Now it looks okay. The only problem is it doesn't actually work at the moment. So I thought I'd fix that up before we go any further. So let's have a look over at the list cell and see what's going on. If you hover over a sub element within an element, Zing highlights it in the simulator or in the Zing preview on your device if you're connected to a device. And it's quite useful for actually debugging what's going on. So you can see there over in the simulator, you can see that this item's 104 by 104 pixels. This here is whatever size that is. But if I actually hover over the list cell itself, you can see there that that list cell has a width of 0 and a height of 120. And again, if I tap on it, you can see there that, and go over to the inspect tab, the height is 120, but the width is 0. What I did when I created the playlist view in an earlier video was that when I dragged these in manually, I anchored, well, they got anchored to the width of the column, which in turn was anchored to the width of the content area within that navigation page. And so that all worked fine. We could, I'll show you two ways that we can do this. When we create these list cells dynamically, we can either set the width here to be equal to the list.width. If I do that, you'll see that it works. Okay, so that's working. The other thing we could do, and I think this is the way I will do it in this case, is I'll go into here, and rather than for these two list cells, I've set the height, but I've left the width, the default width, to be 0. Really, I think what would be a better default width would be the container width. So whatever container that I put these list cells in, I want these list cells to be the width of that container. So what you do is you say width is container.width. And I'll do the same. I'll copy that over to the artist one. Okay, and now I'll go back to the browse tab and I'll remove that that width that I set when I created it. And if we go over here, I think it'll probably still work. Let's see. Yep, so that's still working. And we may as well go into playlist and remove all these anchors. Okay, there we go. So that's a little bit neater, and it means that we don't always have to set the width. We still can, like for example, if we look at well, let's look at this one, for example, in playlists. I could actually, let's say that I wanted to set the width of this second playlist to be half the width of the container. I could just say that width of this is parent.width divided by 2. Let's see what happens now. So if I go into playlist, you can see there that that little chevron is down there, and that's because it's actually setting it to be the width, half the width of the container. Okay. So you can still set the width dynamically if you want, but by default it's going to take on the size of the container. Let's do some other cleanup as well while we're here. So when we tap on one of these playlist list cells, it opens the playlist details, and because I copied that to create the artist one, that's still creating a playlist detail. So let's create a new one of these. We'll duplicate this and we'll call it artist details. Artist details, okay. And now that we're getting a few of these pages, I think it would be better if we group them. So To group stuff, you can just put in something like page.artist details, and now you have a group. So a group is simply, if I right click on here and say rename full, you can see the full name of this element. It's page.artist details. Since there's no element called page, that becomes a group. You can drag other elements into that group if you want to, like that, and that way everything is pretty neatly grouped. Let's just collapse these all up, and we'll have a look at how our project is looking now. So we have an app, and we have a basic, we have some list cells, we have the model, we'll probably add some more models later on, and then we have some pages and tabs. And the reality of it is that you can structure your project however you like. Zing's super flexible when it comes to how you structure it. This is a reasonably good structure for now. And before I continue, I might just go back and update that list cell so that we're opening the artist details page instead of the playlist details page when we tap on an artist. So let's see if that's working. So I'll go in here, hit Lady Gaga, and now we should be opening one of these artist details pages instead. And yeah, you can see down here in the hierarchy that that list cell that we tapped on opened a page, artist details page. So I can tap on the items in this hierarchy to kind of move up in the structure. So when you hit that list cell, you go to the point in the app where it pushed that onto the view stack, and then that list cell is part of the browse tab, which is in turn part of app. So there we go. Anyway, I think I'll leave this video here for now.